talk about the Premier League, shall we? And have a look at the standings. Liverpool on top. Well, actually, Liverpool no longer on top. They're in second place, just 1 point behind Arsenal, and they are hosting Manchester United, who you'll find them down in 10th position. And that is the big one in the Premier League. This is always a game that we look forward to. And of course, we know that Liverpool, despite the fact that they have lost 3 in a row, Robbo, they will go into this one as favourites. However, if you do look at the stats in the last couple of games that these two have played at Anfield, Liverpool have only won twice. There have been a couple of draws, but that does include a 7-0 thrashing. So what on earth can we expect from this game?
Well, we can't expect too much from Liverpool at the moment in terms of how they're performing, because they haven't performed very well all season. They're second in the table, a little bit luckily, because they've won games late on in matches, but they haven't played consistently well. The new players that have come into the side haven't played consistently well. Now is the time, after the international break, for some of those players to start performing, and they've got to start performing quickly and get the crowd on their side as well. Because they're against the Manchester United side, who we just don't know who's going to turn up. There's been occasions when Manchester United, when they're playing against the bigger sides, put in decent performances. The players work much harder. They seem to have more agility about them. But you can't trust them. So I'm not sure how this game is going to pan out. I still fancy Liverpool to win it, though.
All right, so Robbo fancying Liverpool to win it, and that happens to be one of Diddy's former teams. Diddy, I'm going to come to you for this one as well, especially about a certain man that we've been talking about a lot this season, one of the big money signings that Liverpool brought in, and that's Florian Wirtz. However, we were waiting to see when he will finally recreate that form, or at least shine, as we saw when he was part of Leverkusen. He's not quite having that big instant impact that many of the Liverpool fans would have wanted to see. So when is it going to come?
Well, I hope soon. When he joined Liverpool, I said he's too good to fail. But it's been 9 or 10 games now, and I just wonder when the button drops, because it's been too long. He's not in an assist. He's not scored a goal. And what I don't like about Liverpool at the moment, I don't really see it getting better in the next 3 or 4 weeks, because there's not one thing where you put your finger on it and you said, well, if you change this, then I think we get the best out of the team. We get the best out of certain players. At the moment, he has to work really hard when they're tracking back, which is fine, but obviously that's not the reason he was brought to the club. And I think sometimes he loses a bit, or he misses a bit of concentration and maybe stamina when he's got the ball to make these dribblings or to make them decisions and play these killer balls to score goals. So it's been very disappointing so far, I've got to say. I think the way the team plays doesn't really help him, because they haven't really control over games. Last season they controlled games and they suffocated other teams with their possession, which makes it easier for a forward player, because the other teams get tired at some stage. The form of Salah probably doesn't help him either, because I think Salah is not the player he was 4 or 5 years ago. He found it hard to score goals from open play from Christmas onwards. So I think there's quite a few question marks. Kirk has been struggling. Konate has been struggling. So I think there's quite a few players who underperform at the moment, which leads to a team that's not being balanced, that finds it hard to control games. And as I said, I don't really see where the improvement's going to come from, and I admire Robbo's confidence in Liverpool, saying Liverpool's going to win. I think it's a tough game against on Sunday, and if you ask me now they're going to win, I say probably not.
Just building on what you're saying about the balance there and how that's been missing from this Liverpool team, I think it's interesting how they bought so many players this summer who are used to being, right, well, I am the main character here, except they don't have the room for all of these main characters right now. Once they'd got Ekitike, did they need to go and get Alexander Isak as well? Because as Diddy, as I've heard him say before, having 2 #1 strikers, is that a great idea?
Okay, so if you go to the point where they brought Ekitike in, then who were their forwards for the season? Do you remember them?
Wow, you've got...
Nunes was still there, probably?
No, Nunes, I think Nunes had gone.
Well, are you counting Salah?
Yeah, count Salah.
You count Salah.
Gakpo.
On top of that, not many bodies.
And that was the point. That was the point. I think as they went into the Community Shield, for example, they had all the starters out. And
would you include Szoboszlai?
No, I wouldn't do that. They had all their starters out, all the new signings, and it looked great. But then as the game was progressing and they wanted to make substitutions, before you know it, you saw a really young bench. And at that time, they had 1 or 2 players come back from injury, for example. But they were light in that department, you know, for several reasons, as we know. So to go for Isak, is the fact that it's Isak and he's such a big name and such a big price tag? Or is it a case of they've brought somebody in who's going to help that forward line, because they didn't actually have the depth there at all?
He wasn't pro there for a.
I don't know.
It's a squad player, didn't he?
No, he's definitely a squad player.
I know.
He's definitely a squad player.
Yeah, no, but I think Archie makes a good point, because last year, obviously, tragically, they lost Shota, and in Diaz and in Nunes, they had hard-working players. And we see Diaz here. I don't think he's the most gifted player, but I think that's also a reason that Bayern Munich's doing so well, because he does a lot of the dirty work, a lot of the work nobody sees. Now, last year they had these players, and for all his faults Nunes had, he would always, when he did play, always create space, always occupy 2 or 3 defenders. Now, as you say, now they've brought these guys in, they want to play with the ball. They've been the top players in their clubs. They come here to play, but obviously somebody has to do the work. And at the moment, it doesn't seem to happen, because they've got too many players who want to shine, but they don't get the balls to shine because the team is not balanced and they don't have control of games.
Just asking Didi, you know, you're saying that Wirtz, you were saying earlier that Wirtz probably only got 4 or 5 games, and he might then be left out the side if he doesn't start to perform. Is there a chance that you could play Ekitike and Isak up front as a pair and no number 10? Because when Ekitike was at Frankfurt and he was playing with Marmouche, that was when he was at his best, and they played a front 2, and those 2 players are outstanding, both with their pace, their ability to find space, their movement in behind. Is there a thought that you could play with 2 up front and leave Wirtz out the side?
Well, I think Slot has to do something at some stage. Obviously, the problem with Isak is that he joined the club a few weeks ago, and he wasn't fit because he was on strike. He didn't train, and we've seen him now. He, he lasts 20 minutes, half an hour. He played for Sweden, hasn't really made an impact. And I think at some stage this might be an option for Slot to play with 2 up front. And Wirtz, at some stage, he's got to try to influence games going forward, because this is the reason he was brought in. And when I see him play, my big worry about him is some of the games I've seen where he get pushed off the ball, where I hope not, but where I think, has he lost confidence? Because obviously his confidence is low at the moment, which is normal. But has he lost confidence that he can make it in the Premier League? Because once that happens, I think there's probably no way back. And obviously we're not at that stage yet. There's only 10 games. But he's cost a lot of money. Expectations have been high. Yes, I understand that. But at some stage, he's got to influence games going forward. And I think, as you rightly said, from now to the next break for the international games, mid-November, I think we've got to see something.
Yeah. I was just going to ask Naden what he thought in terms of who will come out on top.
I don't think United, for as much as they've drawn a couple of games recently, they've not won there, I think, in maybe 10 years. And Alexis is desperate for me to say United. Actually, no, maybe not, because maybe she'll think I'm being a jinx. So I'm not going to say anything like that. But what I would say, from the other perspective here, we're talking about Liverpool and some of the frailties that they've shown this season. Well, when you're an opposition player, you see those frailties and you start to believe. For every week and every game whereby they're showing something, whether it's really poor in transition, somebody like Wirtz, for example, as Didi said, at times is being pushed over. Do you not think the manager's going to say to this player, listen, if you're near him, make it as physical as possible. If you're defending, just look, how many bodies have they committed forward? This person's lacking confidence. Go and try and do this. Go and try and do that. So I think, weirdly, United are in a really good position, having won their previous game and going to Anfield knowing that all the pressure's on Liverpool, because if it goes wrong, 4 defeats in a row, couldn't say when that last happened.
You know what's interesting, though, Didi, of course, I wanted to get your opinion on this, because this summer when we were monitoring the business that Liverpool were doing in the transfer window, you know, we were thinking, are you City in disguise because of all the money they were spending, all the big names they were bringing in, big names that we knew because of that price tag.
That's a former City player there, you know, have some respect. You've got 2 former City players there, have some respect.
2 here.
I know, that's why I had to chuck it in. But still, we were saying, are you City in disguise? We get Arne Slot is trying to build a team that can potentially win the Premier League as well as the Champions League. You need a deep bench as well with some big names, but now with those hefty price tags attached to it, you're expecting all these players to immediately become a part of that starting 11. But now when you're seeing this imbalance that's going on at Liverpool, do you think he maybe should not have just tinkered with the team as much?
Well, I don't think how much say Slot has got in the transfers, Alexis, because I think in Liverpool the club pays the players, and I think the club saw an opportunity, as you say, City on a decline. Guardiola being there for a long time. We don't know how much longer he'll be there. And obviously Arsenal knocking on the door but not going through it. And I think they saw an opportunity to really move away from United, from City, and maybe even from Arsenal. And as I said, I'm not sure how much say the manager had into the transfers, because as Nathan or Archie rightly said, I'm not sure you want to have two number 9s, because obviously you want competition for places, but if you've got 2 star players and you can't play them both, at some stage you might have to. I'm not sure this is a situation a manager really wants. And I think if you speak to people in Liverpool who are in leading positions, obviously the expectations were different, and I don't think they saw coming what has been happening for the last 3 or 4 months, because everybody thought, well, this got to be the team to beat. Now, you're after 7 or 8 games, you're 1 point behind Arsenal, and you beat them at home in a game you probably were fortunate to win through a wonder goal from Szoboszlai. So I think things have to happen and change quickly at Liverpool. I'm not sure they will, but I think the manager is really under pressure for the first time. It was all well last season. It's easy to give interviews and press conference when you win. And he's been a bit thin-skinned, because a couple of times he was going on about refereeing decisions in the Champions League. He said if we had this referee this week, we would have won the game. So these are things he didn't do last year. So maybe he's on a bit of pressure. Hopefully it'll change soon, but I think they couldn't have a tougher game, as Nathan rightly said, on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing, hindsight's a great thing, isn't it? Because, you know, at the beginning of the season, when we saw Frimpong go there, you thought, what a great signing that is. You know, they've lost Alexander-Arnold. Conor Bradley's a good right back and can fit in there. But if they want to play more expansive, you know, Frimpong has done that brilliantly for Leverkusen over the last. You look at Ekitike, you saw him play for Frankfurt, and you thought that's a great signing as well. The best left back in the league last year, everybody told me was Kirkes. So he's now gone to Liverpool and doesn't look any sort of player whatsoever. So these are all, and Wirtz, we all said was going to be a top-class player. Hindsight's a great thing. They just haven't been able to form the right combination. That's been the problem. The players, I think, are still excellent players. Isak, maybe I've got a slight doubt about him. But the other players, I think, are excellent players and excellent signing. They just haven't been able to get the right balance. And that's the problem that Slot's got with him for the next few weeks.
Well, as Nathan pointed out, begrudgingly, we do know that Manchester United have found a way to kind of raise the level of their game, especially in these kind of fixtures, Robbo. How do they do it in this one? How can they get something out of this?
Well, they've got to first of all defend really well. The back three, you've got to make good decisions when to drop off, when to squeeze the ball. They've got to make sure the midfield don't get overrun, whether that's putting another player in there or whether it's getting one of the front players to drop into midfield when Liverpool have the ball. But they've also got to make sure that they're a threat on the counter-attack. And the wing-backs have got to get high enough to get balls played into the front players. They've got to get enough quality. If Liverpool want to go and press the ball from the goal kick, Chelsea tried to do that against Manchester United. Manchester United played beyond it, and Šeško did quite well at holding up the play and flicking balls on. But the key player for me on the counter, Mbeumo, I think he's been excellent for Manchester United. You know, he's been one of the successes. So hopefully he has a good game.